as I said, I'm Louise Knowles. I'm from the Department of Health and Social Care now, and I'm the Head of Research Policy for the NIHR Infrastructure and Growth. I therefore lead the team that's responsible for overseeing the NIHR infrastructure from the department's perspective, which of course includes the biomedical research centres. I've been asked to come along today to provide a bit of an overview of the NIHR, particularly for those of you who aren't familiar, and also with a focus on what the BRCs are and what they do. And I'm going to try and attempt to highlight some of the work they're undertaking, although do forgive me, I'm a civil servant, I'm not a scientist, so if I get confused with any of this, please do let me know. So just to start with the NIHR, the National Institute for Health Research, this was established in 2006 with its vision to improve the health and the wealth of the nation through research. It is what we call a nationally distributed virtual organisation, which doesn't mean an awful lot, but what it means is that what the NIHR is made up of centres, facilities throughout England. You can't point to one individual building which says this is the NIHR. It's across the NHS all over. It was set up in 2006 by Sally Davies, the CMO, to provide a health research system in which the NHS can support outstanding individuals working in world-class facilities to conduct leading-edge research focused on the needs of patients and the public. It is there to help drive, and it has been driving, the faster translation of basic scientific discoveries into tangible benefits for patients. And it's also about creating the best possible environment for inward investment by the life sciences sector. You can see here what the NIHR does. Overall, what it does is, it funds high-quality research to improve health and care. It helps to train and support health and care researchers. It provides world-class research facilities. And it works with the life sciences industries and charities for the benefit of all, as well as involving patients and the public at every step of the research. The work that's undertaken by the NIHR is managed into sort of 4 complementary work strands. Firstly, the infrastructure, which is what we'll be mainly talking about today, which is about the NIHR providing the facilities and the people for a thriving research environment. Our faculty, supporting individuals carrying out and participating in research through various training awards and support for training in particular areas. Our research, so we actually do commission and fund research through a number of research programs. And our systems, which is there to create a kind of unified and streamlined, simple systems for managing research and its outputs. And we do this all in partnership with many sectors as part of the wider health research ecosystem. That includes other government funders, such as the research councils, academia, of course, charities, and of course the life sciences industry. And the research that NIHR undertakes spans the whole gamut of health: prevention of ill health, promotion of health, disease management, patient care, the delivery of healthcare, public health, and of course those elements of social care relevant to health and well-being. I've put this slide up just to kind of highlight where NIHR sits on the innovation pathway, which I think you're probably all quite familiar with. The NIHR, in terms of it covers experimental medicine right through to applied research, is about the kind of evaluation side, of looking at new things, new ideas, new techniques, new approaches. It's really very much focused on the kind of translation, bridging that gap between the basic discovery science through to the applied side, working then with the NHS to facilitate the translation of evidence into practice. To give you a bit more detail about the infrastructure itself, and I could have put a far more complicated slide up which had all of our research programs and things, but I wasn't going to go there. We fund a range of infrastructure schemes. Our biomedical research centres, of course, also our clinical research facilities that work very closely with the biomedical research centres to support clinical trials. Our experimental cancer medicine centres, which we fund with CR UK. Our translational research collaborations, which are collaborations across our networks of BRCs, for example, and CRFs that work in particular areas of need, such as respiratory disease, joint and related inflammatory disease, dementia. We also have our medtech in vitro diagnostic cooperatives, again, who are centres of expertise there to help with the development of medtech, as well as providing evidencing for in vitro diagnostics for industry. We have, underpinning all of this, our clinical research network, which helps support the delivery of clinical trials. And at the more applied end, our collaborations for leadership in applied health research and care. which is a horrible name, and they are very much at that kind of interface in terms of working very closely with the NHS to take discoveries and get them out into the world. So what does the NIHR infrastructure offer? Well, of course, the BRCs are one of only a number of infrastructure schemes that span the translational pathway. And so, and they represent quite a significant amount of funding, but we have to say we have a range of infrastructure in which we're supporting cutting-edge research, as well as supporting world leaders in their respective fields, and also driving efforts to work with industry, charities, and other research funders. So for the BRCs, really where we are here, with the BRCs, we are funding the leading NHS university partnerships, and they are at the early phase. They're really there to bridge that kind of first translational gap, focusing on driving progress on innovation through experimental medicine and translating discoveries from into NHS practice for the benefit of patients and the health system. And what we are doing is providing funding to ensure that the NHS has the research facilities and expertise it needs to undertake experimental medicine across a range of clinical and research areas. But the NIHR infrastructure offers a whole range of things. Obviously, we're talking here about cutting-edge facilities embedded within the NHS and universities to provide that strong foundation of expertise and leadership in translational research. But there's also a range of other things that the infrastructure can do to help in terms of delivery of clinical trials. It can provide expert support to industry and others on a national basis. For example, we're talking today about gene and cell therapies, and we know there's often a challenge with clinical trials, given that they often require significant infrastructure to enable them to be undertaken safely. Our clinical research facilities support this high-intensity clinical research at the early phase that you need to actually develop these therapies. We also have the Clinical Research Network, which can support, as I said, with study feasibility, setup and delivery. And they work with the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult to ensure that companies coming to the UK are signposted to the specific information regarding the UK environment for research in this area. And the Clinical Research Network has also been working to establish best practice around issues such as pharmacy, site capability, workforce development and governance to ensure that the CRN can effectively support research involving gene and cell therapies. Through the infrastructure, we can also signpost you to other funding schemes, access to leading clinical research expertise, and interestingly also provide access to well-characterised cohorts of patients suitable for research, including the ability to recall on the basis of genotype and phenotype. We have an initiative, the NIHR Bioresource, which provides a national resource of patients and members of the general population who have been volunteered to be recalled for research. This involves 13 of our BRCs and CRFs across England. Each volunteer to the bioresource undergoes genomic and phenotypic characterisation and to allow them to be recalled on a national basis to participate in academic and industry-led experimental medicine and clinical research studies. I'm not going to go into more detail on this. I believe there's a session in one of this afternoon's masterclasses where you can find out more about how the NIHR can support you and how the infrastructure can support you to deliver early translational research in the NHS. So I'd encourage you please to go along if you want to find out more on any of these points. So on to the biomedical research centres themselves. The NIHR first established the BRCs in 2007 with funding for a 5-year period. We then funded them again from 2012 to 17, and we've just entered from April last year our third funding round for the BRCs. The investment that we've put in for the BRCs has really transformed the research landscape in England and enabled collaborations to be established that drive innovation in key areas. As you can see, we awarded 816 million to 20 leading NHS university partnerships across England to enable them to undertake world-class biomedical research. Of those 20, 11 are in the Med-City region, 8 in London, 2 in Oxford and 1 in Cambridge, representing 678 million of this 816 million of investment. And as I say, the BRCs are really what we call almost the jewel in the crown for the NIHR infrastructure. We're funding the people and the facilities who are really working at the cutting edge of new discoveries, technologies and techniques and advances in science to try and demonstrate their potential for clinical use. And they're at the forefront of our efforts to increase national capacity and capability in rapidly advancing fields such as gene and cell therapy that have the real potential to transform medicine. I could have put up a number of slides, lots of metrics, lots of outputs, number of studies, etc. I thought I'd just limit it to one, not to bore you with data, just to demonstrate really that the sustained investment the NIHR infrastructure is putting in, is increasingly supporting early phase commercial trials through, and this is through primarily our BRCs and also our CRFs. So as you see, from 2009-10, the BRCs and CRFs were supporting relatively few early phase clinical trials, and that's increased exponentially over the last few years. So in 2016-17, to supporting over 1,800 early phase clinical trials. So gene and cell therapy, and that's what we're here to talk about, and that's what they do in the BRCs. Well, in the last round of our BRCs between 2012 and 2017, the NIHR itself directly provided £20 million worth of funding for gene and cell therapy focused research themes in the NIHR BRCs. From this, in 2016-17 alone, the BRCs had over 284 active cell and gene therapy research projects and had leveraged research projects worth a total of 118 million from external funders, whether that be from charities or from industry, for cell and gene therapy research. And we're seeing some of this coming out now. You may recall one of the top ones there, the team at Gosh, using modified CAR T cells from donors to treat a 1-year-old child with an aggressive form of leukemia. And that was featured quite heavily on the news at the time. Also working with, for example, our Oxford BRC, who are looking at a new gene therapy trial, which I understand is a world first, to treat X-linked retinitis pigmentosa caused by the RPGR gene. But as I say, that's what's been happening and what's going forward. Well, as I say, we've just secured funding for the next 5 years, for 4 years in the next week, and that will continue to provide significant funding to support the development of more gene and cell therapies, as well as investment in other areas such as genomics, which will help us to enable us to harness genomic information to advance and enable disease diagnostics, prognosis, and perhaps further treatments. The BRCs going forward are focusing on a range of areas of relevance to cell and gene therapy. For example, our Moorfields BRC, who are looking to develop a range of gene therapies to treat inherited retinal dystrophies, AMD, and corneal disorders. Our BRC at UCLH looking to build on their success on using the AAV gene therapy in haemophilia to develop a range of therapies for a range of bleeding disorders. Our BRC in Guy's St Thomas's building on their expertise in using genetically modified CAR-expressing cell therapy in solid cancers. And our Cambridge BRC, as part of their transplantation and regen medicine theme, aiming to increase patient access to organ, tissue, and cell transplantation, including stem cell-derived therapies to improve patient outcomes after translation. That's just a flavour. I'm obviously not an expert in cell and gene therapy, so we really would encourage you to speak to the BRCs over the lunchtime session, who will give you much more information about their capabilities, their individual portfolios, and how they can support the clinical delivery and commercialisation of these sorts of trials. However, if you do go away from today and you haven't had the opportunity to talk to people, or you have questions about this or anything else, and you want to engage with any part of the NIHR infrastructure for support in undertaking clinical research, I'd really encourage you to talk to the Support My Study service or our Office of Clinical Research Infrastructure, and they can help provide assistance with early contact with leading experts, early feedback on clinical research, assistance with site identification, work to help optimise delivery, help with effective study setup, and of course performance monitoring. That's me. Thank you very much. I understand there's no time for questions, so I'll just introduce Matthew Durdy from the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult. Thank you.